So everyone's favorite time of the year is officially here. The 2024 MLB Hall of Fame ballot has officially been released. Let's check it out. So for 2024 Hall of Fame ballot, there's a bunch of newcomers with the first year of eligibility. You can see the list here. Some notable names: Jose Bautista, Joe Mauer, Beltre, Jose Reyes, Bartolo Colon, Big Sexy, Matt Holliday, David Wright, who's a fan favorite. There's a lot of good names on this list, notable names that are first timers. But I don't know if all of these guys are real, true Hall of Famers in every sense of the word. But what we're going to do is take a look at John Morosi's ballot, because he has a really good representation of some of the people we do think are Hall of Famers that are actually first timers as well. So let's pull that up here. You could see here he made 10 picks for his 2024 Baseball Hall of Fame. This is courtesy of MLB.com. And John Paul Morosi selected Carlos Beltran, Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, Torrey Hunter, Andrew Jones, Joe Mauer, Jimmy Rollins, Gary Sheffield, Chase Utley, and Billy Wagner as the Elite 10 to make the Hall of Fame on his ballot. So let's break each of these down one by one. And you want to start off with Carlos Beltran?
Yep. Carlos Beltran, I'm pretty sure he's going to be a Hall of Famer when we look at his stats. You could put the baseball reference up there. Look at that. 70 WAR, 435 home runs, Rookie of the Year, 9-time All-Star, World Series, 3 Gold Gloves, 2-time Silver Slugger. I think he's in.
Yeah, I think he's in too. He's a Hall of Famer in my eyes. I think right now, if you look at his first year on the ballot, which was last year, he did get just under 47% of the votes. But I do feel like this is sort of a little bit of a slap in the wrist for the Houston Astros potential scandal and him being sort of involved in that whole situation. So I think the voters didn't want to make him feel it. But when you look statistically, Carlos Beltran is a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's one of the best all-around players we've seen in quite a while. Just super well-rounded. So I think he's a Hall of Famer. It's just a matter of time before he gets in. Let's move on to John Morosi's second pick of Adrian Beltre.
Yeah, I was actually pretty surprised to see 93.5 WAR. Beltre gets he gets designated as the guy who was like a compiler, to where he was just around a long time and just pretty much getting stats. But to have a 93.5 WAR, I mean, you got to do a little bit more than just compile. He almost has 500 home runs. So and 4-time All-Star, 5-time Gold Glove, 2-time Platinum Glove, which is interesting. 4-time Silver Slugger. I think he's in. I think it's very simple. He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I think he's going to get in with the first time ballot, and he's also got over 3,000 hits. So,
yeah,
it's a terrific average, 286 lifetime average. So, yeah, there could be, some of that longevity, but you can't discredit the fact that it takes a lot of good health and being available, which is, the biggest ability they say is availability. And he's definitely one of those dudes. So I think he's rightfully a Hall of Famer, and John Morosi has that one right. He also has Mr. Todd Helton on his ballot. And this is an interesting one, right? Because he's a Colorado Rockies guy, or most known for. And sometimes those guys get a bad rap for their splits, like in Coors Field and outside of Coors Field.
Yeah, I think this is a case of the Hall of Very Good. I don't think Todd Helton is a Hall of Famer. 61 WAR, which is, they say 70 is the line to where you're in generally, but 369 home runs, hitting in Coors Field. I mean, you would think that. I mean, that's a lot of home runs, more than I could ever hit, right? But still, like, generally, if you put a really good hitter in Coors Field, they're gonna, a Hall of Famer will probably hit 500 home runs there. But 37 stolen bases, how many hits? 2,500 hits. I personally don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
So here's Todd Helton's home and away splits that Omar was talking about. And when you take a look, he had a 345 batting average at home in Coors Field and a 287 batting average away. Now, 287 is nothing to sneeze at either. So still super respectable. But I would agree. Sometimes it's just more or less like, what did the person do in terms of memories with the game? And obviously he was a great player for the Rockies. But some of the accolades, 5-time All-Star. I mean, there's a ton of 5-time All-Stars. Guys that won multiple Silver Sluggers, multiple Gold Gloves. There's no World Series rings in this resume here, which I think would definitely put him over the edge for sure if that was the case. To me, Todd Helton would not be on my Hall of Fame ballot.
Agreed.
Next up, We have Mr. Torrey Hunter.
Okay, 50 WAR. That's not that great. 352 home runs, 2,400 hits, 9 Gold Gloves, which is good. When we were growing up, Torrey Hunter was arguably the best center fielder in the game. For several years, he was just incredible to watch in center field. 2 Silver Sluggers, 5-time All-Star. But again, the more I'm looking at these numbers, again, the Hall of Very Good, a Twins legend. We got to remember to take emotions out of it. He is a legend in the Twins. They could retire his number, put it in the rafters, whatever you want to do. But I don't think these numbers are Hall of Fame numbers.
This is a tough one because he's a very likable player, right?
Yeah.
A likable guy. No. I'm not saying he gets in because of it, but
okay.
But I think people get a bump because of it, just like some players get a bump down because of it, right? Like Manny Ramirez. We could go on for days about some of these guys are some of the best pure hitters that we've seen, but they got no shot to get in, right? But
yeah, he took steroids though.
All right. Well, you want to bring up this. All right. You want to bring up that little. All right. But the point is, Torrey Hunter is one of those guys that had great defender. But when you look at the resume overall, terrific, glove and all that, consistent hitter. But I think he's more of a retire his number with the Minnesota Twins and move on. I don't see him as one of the all-time greats that should be enshrined in the Hall of Fame. So I agree with you there. Torrey Hunter is not a Hall of Famer. Next up, we have Mr. Chase Utley of the Philadelphia Phillies.
60. This is actually a higher WAR than I thought of Chase Utley. 64.5, 259 home runs, 275 batting average, hits 1,885. Maybe because he was always hurt. I remember Utley being hurt a lot. 6-time All-Star. He's not a Hall of Famer in my eyes. Again, he's a Phillies legend for the he did such good things there, especially the 2008 World Series. But no, man, I think these numbers are not Hall of Fame worthy.
I thought that too before I looked at Chase Utley's numbers, and I thought no at first, but I've actually gone to the other side of it, and here's why. Like his impact for the Phillies, and he did win a World Series. He's terrific. Got to put his number up, retire his number with the Phillies. But when I looked at it, I think what's going on with Chase Utley and him, what makes it an interesting case with John Morosi voting him in is that you have to look at it also relative to the position sometimes. And I think with second base, I don't want to say historically, but it's generally kind of a weaker position in terms of overall talent, pound for pound. So when I look at it, look at this and let me know what you think. I pulled up Baseball Reference for all-time second base like WAR, right? Yeah. And you can see like Roger Hornsby, Eddie Collins, Joe Morgan. I mean, these guys are the elite. Carew, Whitaker, Robinson Cano. Oddly enough, Robinson Cano was actually one of the better all-time hitters in terms of second baseman. Ryan Sandberg, Roberto Alomar. Look who's not that far behind, though. Like Chase Utley at a 64.5 WAR. And remember, second base, right? Ryan Sandberg at a 67, Roberto Alomar 67. These guys are Hall of Famers. And there was like no question about those guys getting in. And you're talking Chase Utley was injured a lot. And that's clearly something that, it sucks that he was injured. However, he's not that far behind. And when you look at positions, you have to sort of weigh that into the equation a little bit. So what do you think when you see Chase Utley's WAR versus some of these other guys at the second base position? Jackie Robinson. He's Chase Utley above Jackie Robinson.
That's crazy. I mean, like I said, the injuries, because you can see right there the plate appearances. He's at 7,863, and Craig Biggio is above him by what's that? 1 point whatever WAR, and he has 12,000 plate appearances. So I didn't look at it this way. I mean, that's a good case. I mean, since you bring this up, maybe it's something to open it to change my opinion. But I know for a fact that what derailed him was injuries. Like that is as obvious by the plate appearances, because if he's batting 12,000 times, 10,000, 10,000 times, he's gonna do some more damage at the plate, and that WAR would be a lot higher.
Initially, when I looked at it, I also thought Chase Utley was not a Hall of Famer, but digging deeper, I do feel like Chase Utley is a Hall of Famer because if he was healthier for much longer, he would have been higher up in the second base rankings here. And not only that, I just think that if he is a Hall of Famer, he's not going to be first ballot. Like I think he should be someone that probably gets in either the second or third time. He's not like that shoe-in that I think deserves it in the very first try. But for the most part, I do think now Chase Utley is a Hall of Famer. So I'm going to agree with John Morosi.
Yeah, I changed my opinion. I think so too, based off these numbers only, though.
All right, next up, we have a really tough one. We have Joe Mauer.
I'm a sucker for home runs and stuff. You know that already. But he has 143 home runs, 55 WAR. Catcher's the hardest position on the field, so you got to respect that. 306 batting average is nothing to sneeze at. Over 2,000 hits, MVP. This is going to be controversial because everybody loves Joe Mauer. That's the thing. Twins legend. Believe he retired with the Twins. He was there his whole career. 3 times Gold Glove and MVP. I was gonna say no, but I'm looking at these numbers just right there, and I don't. Damn, 923 RBIs. I mean, he played on bad teams, probably. 1,000 runs. I can't give you. I'm gonna say 75% yes. That's what I think.
I'm going to say yes. I think that his career was sort of an odd one. He obviously had a terrific career and won an MVP. He always hit for high average. Injuries started to strike. They moved him to first base. I feel like his mojo was never the same after he moved to like second base, but they did that to keep him healthy. It's a weird one, but I do think Mauer is a Hall of Famer, just not like a sexy Hall of Famer. I mean, it was just sort of one of those careers that was like, we know he's one of the most like fundamental hitters, but sometimes those guys don't get all the highlights and ESPN, top tens and things like that in terms of notoriety. But he's tried and true, consistent, and that says a lot. His career was somewhat cut short too, so you can't forget that because of the injuries. So there's always that like room for potential. But at the end of the day, when he was on the field, he was one of the most fundamental hitters, consistent hitters you would want on your team. It's just he kind of got stuck on a bad Minnesota team for his entire career, which you can't really ding them too much for. So I do think pound for pound, Joe Mauer is a Hall of Famer. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? I don't think so. I think he probably needs to wait a couple of years to actually get into that 75% vote. But I do think overall, Joe Mauer is a Hall of Famer. He gets in. Next up, we have Mr. Jimmy Rollins, shortstop for the Philadelphia Phillies, right there alongside Chase Utley, who we just talked about.
Yeah, they were a tag team, right? Shortstop, second base for a while. No, that easy. No, this is easy. I didn't even have to really look at much. I mean, I know he was again a Phillies legend. I used to like watching him play shortstop. He was cool. MVP, that's impressive. 2008 World Series, 4-time Gold Glove, but the hitting stats is just very, very underwhelming. For a shortstop too. Let's be real. Shortstops generally have good bats. And you want your shortstop to have some power as well. And 231 home runs is not really showing that. 936 RBIs, stolen bases. He was fast. He got some stolen bases there, but overall, that 47.6 WAR is not Hall of Fame worthy.
I am going to agree with you. Jimmy Rollins is not a Hall of Famer. This is similar to what we talked about with Chase Utley, but the complete opposite in terms of the position. Like the fact that Jimmy Rollins was a shortstop hurts him because even though those are some impressive statistics, you have to like up your game at the shortstop position. You're right. It's a much more offensive forward position than second base, where I think the expectations on the second baseman's overall career and body of work from an offensive side could kind of get watered down a little bit. And you're still like, yep, that guy's a Hall of Famer. Jimmy Rollins is going up against some tough competition when you look at some of the all-time shortstops and their statistics. So I just feel like when you look at it pound for pound, he's, definitely one of the more memorable players of that generation. Did a lot for the Phillies, was a terrific player, but I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Jimmy Rollins is not going to make my ballot. So I disagree with John Morosi on that one. So next up, we have Mr. Gary Sheffield.
I like him. I love Gary Sheffield. Gary Sheffield is one of my favorite players to watch. His batting stance, I used to try to do it when I was growing up, and it never worked because I wasn't that good, I guess. But man, the way he used to just go like that, and he was just cool to watch. 60 WAR, over 500 home runs, a great batting average, 292. 2,600 hits, 9-time All-Star, 97 World Series, 5 times Silver Slugger, batting title. The RBIs. So we just looked it up real quick. So basically the average Hall of Famer for RBIs hits about 1,200, 1,250. So you can see right here, Sheffield's way over that at 1,600 RBIs. That's pretty impressive, man. I think Gary Sheffield too. I remember when he was coming up to bat, it was just you wanted to watch him because you didn't know what he was gonna do. It was probably gonna be a home run. He was gonna hit it hard either way, and he swung. When he swung, he swung. I mean, you know what you're talking about. He used to try to kill the ball. I love Gary Sheffield. I love watching him. I think he's in.
Yeah, I am agreeing with you. Gary Sheffield's a Hall of Famer because of all those things you said. He's a memorable guy. That
Yeah.
swing is unforgettable. You said if you didn't take an at bat with a wiffle ball bat, not trying
Yeah.
to emulate Gary Sheffield at one point, and in the statistics just back it up. 500 home runs, almost a 300 batting average, like you said. These are numbers that are Hall of Fame worthy. I think the knock on Gary Sheffield, though, is the media didn't really love Gary Sheffield. So from that perspective, is that something that's a knock on him as opposed to, like we talked about, the likability factor, right? Like someone shouldn't get in because of it, but someone shouldn't also not get in because of it, right? So that's an interesting part and a dilemma, I think, for Gary Sheffield. And I say that because when you look at it, these are the list of returning players on the ballot. And this is Gary Sheffield's 10th year. Okay. And he's only at 55% of the vote. So he has, I believe, another 5 years or so to try to get into that 75% threshold. So despite the fact that he has all the accolades and, you and I agree he should be a Hall of Famer, he needs to start inching up pretty soon here to try to get into that before he's going to become ineligible for the ballot. So Gary Sheffield, just know you have our vote. The Breaker Bros are behind you. You should be a Hall of Famer. So the last person on John Morosi's Hall of Fame ballot is Billy Wagner, closer.
I don't know much about closers. All I know is that Mo is the best. So I guess you got to compare it from there. Having 422 saves it sounds pretty impressive. We're going to bring up Mo's number in a second. But what I like, though, is that whip at 0.998. That's extremely impressive. That ERA at 231. The WAR, we really can't measure WAR with closers. Mariano breaks that though. You can't guess his WAR is pretty high. We'll see right now, but I think Billy Wagner has a case. Look at that. Mariano's crazy. Again, we just want to compare it to the best, 652 saves. The whip is actually Billy Wagner has a better whip than Mariano just by a hair. What do you think? I mean, this is going to be tough. And Billy Wagner's ERA is extremely respectable too. Mariano's 2.21, Billy Wagner 2.31. It's going to be tough. I mean, he was one of the best closers of our generation.
So when you look at Billy Wagner, he's very close in his 9th year. This is his 10th year here is 68%. He's got to get to 75. So I do think he has a few years left there. He's going to inch in. Closers are tricky, though. I mean, when you look at it, when his career saves, he's ranked number 6 all time. But some of the guys ahead of him are not in the Hall of Fame. You have John Franco. He's been someone that was eligible a long time ago, never got in, and he pitched a lot more innings, even though he had roughly the same amount of saves as Billy Wagner. So you could look at it as Billy Wagner was a lot more efficient in getting those saves maybe than John Franco. Closers a really tricky spot for Hall of Famers because you could be super great, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're a Hall of Famer. The folks here with the little pluses, Mariano, of course, Trevor Hoffman, and Lee Smith, are Hall of Famers. Dennis Eckersley is a Hall of Famer. These guys are still active. It's going to be interesting to see Kimbrel and Jansen. Mm-hmm. Billy Wagner, I think, ultimately is a Hall of Famer, but I think it's one of those, it just took him multiple years, obviously, to get in, and he just kind of got enough votes to sneak in, and he's going to be remembered as one of the better, or best closers of all time. But closer's a tricky one, and I think a lot of things have to go right for a closer to be an actual Hall of Famer. Dominance, great team, longevity. So I do think he is going to be a Hall of Famer, and I'm okay with it. I mean, it's all right. As long as my Mariano Rivera is at the top of this list, I have no worries about the closers in the Hall of Fame.
He has 15 years to get there, pretty much. They have 15 years to be on the ballot.
That's right.
He's going to get, I think. But then again, what's the argument for John Franco? That's a whole different can of worms.
Oh, man, that's a whole nother separate video. You guys let us know in the comments. So that's our 2024 MLB Hall of Fame ballot. You let us know where we got it right and where we got it wrong.